a lot more may exist elsewhere as we pan about. If we look down into this building from the opposite side, we can see niches along apparently all sides. So that would have been an important little shrine or chapel. Evidence of the classic Inca design, except for this one right here, and that's a pretty rough example. Notice that these stones certainly were not the ones that were originally in place. This has a pillow-like look to it, as does this one, leaving this large gap which you'd never see there. So this was probably put back together again rather rapidly, and mainly to provide something for tourists to see. On the other hand, when you look closely at the niche walls, you can see that there is considerable tightness. Closer look at this curving wall. Now notice it not only curves horizontally, but it curves vertically, slightly in at the top versus the bottom. Angel indicated that this exfoliation that we're seeing here is the result of their using chemicals, soaps, brushes, metal tools to clean the algae off them at various points in time. They've now abandoned all of that, since the microbes accelerated the growth after that behavior, to just simple wood tools, and they scrape it off, hoping that that will reduce this exfoliation. Way is interesting. You can see how it's working its way up to that trapezoidal design, so perhaps they filled in this upper portion with similar stones. Out into this building of niches, but it has an interesting little courtyard in front of it that also this room opens up to, so you can probably guess as amateur archaeologists that this room was intimately connected with that one. Have this entryway with those lower rocks. There doesn't seem to be any potential evidence for more rocks that would have created a tighter trapezoidal look. My guess is a lot of this was just reconstruction as quickly as possible so that people would have a chance to see what this generally looked like. Pan along this wall, hopefully you can get a sense of the green color. That apparently is the natural color of this volcanic stone that the Incas used. And much of the Inca stone looks so brownish is because this covering was put on the top of the stone walls to protect it, and as rain hits it, it leaches out brown kind of a chemical, if you will, a sand, and that coats these wall surfaces. A little bit of gap suggesting some kind of probable sinkage, if you will, of this structure. You can see the tight Inca stone. This is one of, I think, at least in Cusco, 4 or 5 different styles. This would be not the most advanced style. You see a little hint of this here with this little slight edge, or angle rather, placed in piece of stone there. It's pretty much a row of the same size stones. Imagine as the Inca developed their skill at making these stones fit at the micro level, we just noticed that became a style that one aspired to. So then they made dramatic use of their ability. The corner of the complex was probably walled significantly, like a fortress, I would think. Certainly aspiring to the height of this small outcropping. Here are some flat areas, but not sculpted like the Inca would normally do. Pretty much left alone, it looks like. Except maybe at the top there was a little bit of modeling, but not much, and certainly not of the normal Inca quality or character. Looking at Ollantay Tambo's incredible sculpting of these stone outcroppings to not only make stairs, but also to make little ledges on which to put probably religious icons of some sort. It's strange to see nothing here. Holes that are in these stones apparently were holes that were created by the people after the Spanish had left or abandoned this area after conquering it. The people then quote-unquote harvested it with their carriages, trucks, wagons, whatever, to basically protect wood that they used in either their dwellings or something else of that nature, so that the wood wouldn't rot out. They'd punch a hole in there and stick the wood in there, and that would protect it. Apparently those holes go all the way through. These are carved stones that were part of the Inca buildings, including lintels, blocks, locks, and canals. The raw materials used to make these were brought from Io de la Virgen quarry that is located 1 kilometer away from the archaeological site next to the Salante River. In order to extract these stones, several cutting and carving techniques and tools were used, such as heating and cooling, friction, polishing, stone chisels, and wooden mallets. I'm totally convinced that's true, because why would you have a hole on the end of a tall stone instead of at the side where you had more stability with the stone outside? More holes were a technique by which some cultures, Greeks, Romans I believe, used to tie 2 stones together so there wouldn't be any movement or slippage. Now these stones are interesting because they were what used for a pivoting door, and what they would have is one of these would be up above, one of these would be on the bottom. And then I'll show you the door, which was made of wood and tied together with rope, would be placed like this, and then a rope would be wrapped around this area to hold the door, so the door pivoted, being held in place by the ropes and the fact that there was one up above and one below. It still seems a little curious to me. Other societies have used similar such holes, or even upward protrusions, if you will, in stone to hold a large door, and much more easily so than this method. We see stones that were probably part of the aqueduct that we have seen in some situations, not very large, just large enough to move water. Carved for what position or place in structures, who knows? Now, if you look at this rock, and remember this is volcanic, which tends to be far more prey to damage by water than I think what was in the Peruvian sites. But here you can see stairs, if you will, and maybe they really were stairs, or they could have been layers for displaying items. It's not clear. The fact that these large lintels have holes in them also suggests to me that that was a way of tying stones together, either with a piece of wood or a piece of metal that were put in there with some kind of caulk or cement to hold all of the structure together, or the joint together. Starting a couple hundred years ago, when the archaeologists got excited about this area, they started going outside of this area, combing all of the houses, streets, looking for these stones, and if they found them, they recouped them and brought them back here. See something that looks very Inca-like. You not only have a trapezoidal design as we look at it from the top down, you have the pillow design on this side here, so it probably was on a wall, and then you have the inside finished also. Now this stone's been subjected to a lot of weather, but could it have been done with the same aspiration that the Peruvian Incas did, and that was that all sides, even if they were never to be seen by man again, would be perfectly done. Very Steve Jobsian. Different levels were used for having a clue. Were they just defensive walls, one after the other? Like another use for those grooved stones as a way of channeling water outside of the interior of the fortress to the outside. And notice that trapezoidal stone there, very Inca-like. Now whether it was originally here or up above, who knows. Corner is pretty evidently typical Inca, or seems to be. Whether it's original or not, I don't know. You'll notice right there at that joint there, that symmetry of that curve ceases and it starts driving inward, and even that stone there is flat rather than pillowed, so who knows again how rapidly this was put back together again. It served its function. It's more important that the majority of people can appreciate the concept as a result of the work they did, versus archaeologists who have their special areas that are protected where they can ensure they're looking at the authenticity of the old. Around these doorways seems to be the most authentic, perhaps because they all fell together and were recognizable, or because they haven't yet fallen and they were just that much more stable by design. We're looking for that stairway. The stairway's over here somewhere. Certainly a beautiful looking wall. Those white patches may be archaeologists' devices for measuring how much separation is occurring, how long a period of time. Perhaps I can get Alejandro to translate this for me, but